So you probably heard about real estate syndications, but how do you vet the real estate syndicator and the deal that they're buying? In this video, we're gonna cover all that kind of stuff. First, a general overview and knowing the players, then key metrics and what's normal in a real estate syndication, the 6-point due diligence checklist, liquidity, taxes, exit, why now is the best time to invest in a real estate syndication, and then we'll wrap up the video. But before we get into it, 90% of you guys watching are not subscribed. So if you want straight, no fluff breakdowns like this every single week, tap the button down below. Please like and subscribe to the video. With that being said, let's get into it. So first, let's go into knowing the players, the who's who of a real estate syndication. So there's two real differences, right? So you have the GP and the LP. The GP, or the sponsor, which would be myself in the deal, because we have a real estate syndication, a real estate fund, we go find the deal, sign on the debt, we run the asset, and you, the LP, get to be a passive investor and you supply cash. So typically the GP will go find the building. Let's say we're buying something for $1 million. We're gonna get a loan on that building for 70 to 80% of the purchase price. So 700 to 800K, and then we raise the rest of the money. We put a little bit of skin in the game. We always put in typically 5 to 10% of the money in the deal. And then we raise the rest of the capital. So if we are buying something for $1 million, we're getting a loan for 80%, $800,000. We need to raise $200,000. So we will put in $20,000 and raise $180,000 from LPs. LPs get to invest passively, they supply equity in the deal, and they don't have to sign on the loan, and they're a limited partner, so they have limited risk, limited liability, where the GP, or the general partner, signs on the debt and they take all the risk of the deal. What you want to check out for is a track record, skin in the game, and references. The cool thing about LPs, you have limited liability and priority on distributions. Typically, you get dispersed first. And then you also want to vet and talk about the property manager. So who's going to be running the asset, and kind of like a property manager, asset manager. Sometimes the GP or the sponsor will actually do this, but other times the GP and the sponsor will hire a third-party property manager to manage the day-to-day operations of the deal. And what you want to ask questions about there is the size, local expertise, and reporting standards for that property manager. Okay? Rule of thumb, if the GP has no personal equity in the deal, you want to walk away. You always want the GP or the sponsor to have some cash or some skin in the game. Number 2, key metrics and what's normal. So these are all the metrics, typical metrics of a real estate syndication. We have target IRR, equity split, acquisition fee, asset management fee, hold period, all that kind of stuff. So target IRR, this is kind of the return that you can expect to make on your investment. And IRR is return on investment, but with the inclusion of time. So it's pretty much the internal rate of return is what it stands for. And it's the return you would make year over year over year over year, because most of these deals are gonna be a 3 to 5 year period. Most of the deals that we do with our real estate syndication is a 5 year. So if you're making a 15% IRR, you're gonna make a 15% return year over year over year over year over year for 5 years straight, okay? So typical real estate syndications are going to be 14 to 18% for value add multifamily. The equity split is typically going to be 70-30 or 80-20, with the LP getting most of the profit. And so equity split is really just the profit share. So when we have $10 in profit coming in, 70 or 80, 7 or 8 of those dollars are going to go to the LP, and 2 or 3 of those dollars are going to go to the GP. There's also typically an acquisition fee, which is 1 to 3% of the purchase price. This is for all the legal docs that the GP has to do. So the GP has to prepare the fund, they have to do the earnest money, they have to hire the lawyer to do the closing costs, they have to fly out to the property, they have to do all these things, right? Raise the money, spend money on marketing to raise the capital from accredited investors, right? So that acquisition fee kind of takes care of all of that for the GP. Then there's a typical asset management fee. So this is a fee that the GP makes on an annual basis to manage the funds. So typically we have to set up like SEC software and like make sure that everything's above board and kosher with the SEC. So we have to go out there and pay and buy these expensive softwares to manage those funds, do all the accounting, all the bookkeeping, and on an annual basis and on a quarterly basis, we have to do distributions. quarterly reporting, annual reporting, K1 reporting. There's so many things that go along with this. So this is kind of to keep the lights on for the fund, and for the fund or the syndicator to actually spend that money on hiring good quality people, asset management people who can respond to emails, respond to your queries, to make sure that you feel comfortable and you feel good for that 5-year hold. Most of these deals are going to be 3 to 7 years if it's a value add play. If it's not a value add, it's probably going to have to be a little bit longer, like 7 to 10 years, to get enough of the equity out. All right, now the 6-point due diligence checklist. So these are 6 things to look out for when you're going out there trying to vet a syndicator. What the hell should you look out for? Number 1, their track record. Do they have previous exits? How is their actual data versus the pro forma? The property manager that they're hiring or they've used in the past, have they used this person in the past? How much experience do they have? How many doors do they have under management? So you want to kind of look at some case studies that they've done in the past. It doesn't matter how old those case studies are, because experience is experience. And even if they've done some multifamily deals 10 years ago that overperformed and they maybe haven't bought in a couple of years, that's probably pretty common because a lot of people haven't bought in the last couple of years, but now multifamily is starting to make a hell of a lot more sense. Debt terms. So the kind of debt that they are getting, is it fixed or floating? What are the rate caps? Is there a refi risk? All those kinds of questions you want to be asking. Is it non-recourse debt? Where are they getting the debt from? Because the debt is funding 70 to 80% of the deal. It's like a big portion of the deal is going to be debt, right? So is it a floating interest rate? How many years is it locked in? Is there prepayment penalties? Is a prepayment penalty step down? There's all these kind of questions that you want to ask around the debt terms, because the debt is going to be super, super important to make sure that the deal is safe and kosher. And you want to make sure that they're getting debt from either Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. If they're getting debt from anybody else, it's probably going to be much more expensive, and it's not going to be government backed. It's probably not going to be non-recourse. There's only a couple of banks that will actually do non-recourse as well. So keep those things in mind. Number 3, market fundamentals. The city they're buying the property in, and then also like the zip code kind of fundamentals. Like what's happening in that zip code? What's happening in that state? Like for example, we're doing a lot of stuff in Illinois right now, right? Chicago, Illinois. Illinois, people come to us and say, I'm not investing in Chicago, Illinois. It's too tenant friendly. And I say, okay, cool. What do you think, what does tenant friendly mean to you? Tenant friendly means, oh, I can't get a tenant out. It's going to take years. Well, not really. So Illinois is definitely more tenant friendly, but there's no rent control. We can get a tenant out within 3 to 6 months. It doesn't cost that much money to get a tenant out. And then our property manager that we have has tons of experience getting the tenants out of these properties. They have tons of experience getting these tenants out of these properties, and their eviction rate is less than 1%. They manage 5,000 doors. Their collection rates on a monthly basis are 98%. Like, there's so much stuff for you as the LP when you're going and looking at all these different deals. Like, would you invest in California? First glance, no. Could I be convinced to invest in California if somebody had a game plan for the rent control, for evictions? They have an amazing property manager that shows me the data and the facts that they can get around this kind of shit. Yes, I definitely would be investing in California. I can be convinced so long as the numbers make sense. You hear what I'm saying? So like, would you invest in California if your vacancy percent was not 5% but 50%? Yes, you would. Okay, cool. So it's not only about the state, it's about making the numbers make sense for that state and for that market. And if in California I could budget 50% and I can buy the property and have a cash flow and still have this huge budget for vacancy and evictions and rent control and all this kind of stuff, would I invest there? Absolutely. But at first glance, don't just count off a market just because it's in a state that you don't want to invest in because it's a little bit more landlord friendly. So that's kind of like the market fundamentals I want to talk about. It's like, I prefer to invest in a larger city, whether it's a blue or a red state, so long as the numbers make sense and the math makes sense to me. And I know for the next 5 to 10 years, I'm going to be good based on those numbers for the market fundamentals, then I feel pretty good about it. Okay. So yes, it's one thing to look at the landlord laws, but I want you to look at the landlord laws in regards to the experience and just make sure that when you're investing in one of these deals, that their numbers match that local market demographic and what's going on. Okay. Next, diving in a little bit more like micro into the market, I want to know that I'm investing in a fringe area, like an area that's the ugliest zip code surrounded by a bunch of beautiful zip codes. So I want to invest in the C-class area, C-class blocks, surrounded by B and A-class blocks. And that's exactly the kind of deals that we go out there and we try to find. And that is really, really tough. Unless you go and hit the pavement, drive around, do all this kind of shit, it's really hard to know which areas those areas are in, but that's exactly what we try to go and do. So we'll drive to Chicago, rent a car, stay there for a couple days, drive every single zip code possible. We have driven almost every single zip code where the prices make sense in Chicago, Illinois, and try to figure out where those blocks are, what zip codes those would be in. And from there, we have made the decision on choosing a couple different zip codes, and that's where we've been buying multifamily properties so far. So that comes along with experience and then the market fundamentals of what's happening in the right zip codes. Where are new developments coming up? Why are new developments happening there? What does it look like in the next 5 to 10 years in that area that could change what happens in that area? So you want your GP and sponsor to have that experience and have the numbers back up the data, but then also you want the property manager and the property management intel and data to go against those market fundamentals. So hope that all makes sense. Next, number 4, business plan. So you want to know what the business plan is for each property. Some of them, they might be buying them turnkey, they might be full guts, they might be a light value add. I think right now the best thing to be buying is this light value add. Heavy lift stuff is just super risky because there's just so many ups and downs in the market right now. So I think if you're investing in these deals, you want to do something with just a light value add where you can stabilize the property in the first 12 or 24 months. Stress tests, does the deal survive a 2% rate hike or a 10% rent dip or exit cap rates testing? So you want to make sure that the GP has stress tested this, and they should show some of those stress tests in the deck that they send over to you. So just make sure when you're looking at a deal that they have a couple, at least one stress test in their numbers, and you can ask them what else have they stress tested on those deals. Alignment, is a GP co-investing at least 10% of the equity? Again, we always do on our deals, but you want to make sure if you're investing in a syndication that the other people you're looking to invest in have also co-GP'd or they're investing into the deal too. Let's talk a little bit about liquidity. So your money is going to be locked in until a refi or sale. So I want you to treat your LP shares like a 5-year CD. So you're hopefully going to be able to get quarterly distributions and quarterly dividends or monthly dividends, whatever kind of deal you're investing in. But just plan on that money being long-term and you investing $25K and getting $50K out in a 5-year period. Tax-wise, you're going to be getting a K1 showing paper losses because of depreciation that often shelter early cash flow, which is going to be great. And that's one of the greatest benefits of investing in real estate is that the returns on real estate, let's say you make a 15% return on real estate, to make that same return on the stock market, you would need a 30% on the stock market because you don't have all these paper losses, all this depreciation with real estate. So you literally have to make double the return in the stock market to make the same return, to make half the return with real estate. So keep that in mind when you're comparing different investments. On sale, expect capital gains and recapture, plan for 1031 exchanges or pay the IRS. Now is the best time. I have other videos talking about this, but loan maturities, 2 to 4% debt rolling into 6% are forcing people to sell their multifamily real estate. Cap rate expansion means better entry pricing if you underwrite conservatively. We've seen insane cap rates in the city of Chicago across other markets. Funds with dry powder and long-term debt locked can scoop distressed sellers at discounts. This is exactly what we're doing. With that being said, if you do want to invest with me, we have a real estate fund. You must be an accredited investor, so this is for accredited investors only. But hopefully this content and education can kind of prep you and prime you and help you learn more about real estate syndications and what they do and how they make money. With that being said, if you do want to invest with me, click the link down below. Also comment down below, what's your biggest question about real estate syndications? What have you looked for? What surprises have you ran into? What questions do you have? We'd love to make future videos around this topic. Thanks so much for watching the video. See you next time.